Welcome to Dolphin Dive Daily, your go-to spot for everything Miami Dolphins. If you bleed aqua and orange, hit that subscribe button and join the pod. The Miami Dolphins step into their bye week carrying a strange mix of satisfaction and frustration. Like a team that knows it survived a potential trap game, but also left a pile of opportunities scattered behind at the goal line. Their 16-13 overtime win over the Washington Commanders in Week 11 didn't come with fireworks, didn't reshape any playoff picture, and didn't settle lingering concerns about Miami's red zone execution. Yet it quietly cracked open a much bigger storyline, one that has the potential to reshape the Dolphins' offensive identity for the stretch run. If the coaching staff is willing to take a swing, that isn't just bold, it's transformative. That storyline revolves around a familiar face. A player who has been part of the Dolphins' locker room fabric long enough to feel like a veteran pillar even though his age still whispers upside. Austin Jackson, the former first-round pick from the 2025 NFL Draft, has officially entered his 21-day activation window after spending the season on injured reserve. He practiced last week. He'll rest through the bye. He'll get a full week of preparation after that. And when Miami takes the field again, he could be right back where he's spent most of his career, anchoring the right side of the offensive line. But this is where things get interesting, because Jackson's imminent return doesn't just plug one hole, it opens a door. A door that lets Miami solve multiple problems at once. A door the Dolphins haven't walked through yet, but one that would let them upgrade not just right tackle, but right guard in a single, decisive move. And if there was ever a time to roll the dice, to kick the tires on something that could raise both the ceiling and the floor of this offense, it's now, when the standings are still open, the playoff race is tightening, and every little detail of offensive line play becomes magnified. The change starts with Larry Borom, the man who stepped in at right tackle while Austin Jackson recovered, and unexpectedly played himself into an argument for continued relevance. Borom arrived in Miami as a classic utility lineman, the type of versatile, plug-and-play body that front offices dream of when injuries strike. In Chicago, he played everywhere: left tackle, left guard, right tackle, logging meaningful snaps, and proving that coaches could trust him to survive on any island they dropped him on. And through 10 weeks with the Dolphins, he has done more than just survive. He has settled, he has steadied. Against Washington, he played his best game of the season. In a league where offensive line play swings violently from week to week, that kind of stability is gold. It's the sort of performance that usually earns a man the right to stay in the lineup, even when a starter returns. But Miami's situation is more complicated than that. Borom's competence could actually become the very reason he moves not to the bench, but to right guard, where the Dolphins quietly and consistently have been losing the leverage battle. In the moments that matter most, on paper, Miami shouldn't have a right guard problem. They signed James Daniels to a 3-year, $24 million deal this offseason, expecting him to lock down the position and erase the kind of inconsistencies that crept into last year's interior line play. But Daniels suffered a pec injury that knocked him out after just 3 snaps in Week 1. Since then, the position has been patched by necessity, not by choice. Cole Strange has seen time there, and while he hasn't been the lightning rod for criticism that rookie Jonah Savania has endured at left guard, the tape reveals a truth that stats obscure. Strange isn't trusted to win consistently without help. Slide protections lean his way, extra support shades his direction, and when the Dolphins get into the red zone, where space shrinks and technique becomes gospel, Strange has struggled to anchor at the point of attack. You could see it in the Washington game, where Miami's red zone failures repeatedly pointed back to the same spot. On the 3rd and goal carry from the 1-yard line, Devon Achane looked like he had daylight, but Strange fell off his block on Javon Kinlaw, letting the defender blow up a run that had a chance. On the 4th down attempt with Ollie Gordon, Strange was driven backwards, collapsing the right side of the formation and leaving Gordon grasping for yards that never existed. These weren't isolated plays, they were snapshots of a season-long theme. The Dolphins' red zone troubles aren't about play calling, they're not about running back selection, they're not about lack of creativity, they're about losing individual battles in the trenches, where inches matter, and Miami has too often been the team surrendering those inches instead of stealing them. And that's where the idea of shifting Larry Borom to right guard becomes more than just a footnote. It becomes a legitimate strategy. Borom has played guard at the NFL level. He has the size, the leverage profile, and the hand technique to survive inside. He understands the system now. He's confident. He's coming off his strongest performance, and importantly, he doesn't need slide protections to hold up one-on-one. That alone could ripple through Miami's entire offensive structure, freeing up blocking resources that have been spent babysitting a position. That should be a strength, not a liability. Imagine an offensive front that lines up Patrick Paul at left tackle, Jonah Savania at left guard, Aaron Brewer at center, Larry Burrow at right guard, and Austin Jackson returning to his natural spot at right tackle. Suddenly, there's sturdiness across the board. Suddenly, Miami's run game becomes more vertical. Suddenly, play action doesn't require the same layers of protection. Suddenly, second and short becomes manageable instead of a gamble. And yes, those red zone frustrations, the ones that burned them against Washington and threatened to burn them in earlier weeks, begin to fade. This isn't just theory. The snap counts tell the story of a line stretched thin but feasting on continuity where it can find it. Jonah Savania leads the team with 637 snaps, followed closely by Brewer and Paul at 630 each. Burrow himself sits at 600, which reflects exactly how much he has been relied upon. Strange, by comparison, has logged for 165 snaps, and his performances have repeatedly forced Miami to choose between creativity and security. That's why the bye week becomes more than just a rest stop. It's a laboratory, a perfect time to install adjustments, test new combinations, build chemistry, and experiment with a lineup that could carry Miami not just into the postseason, but deep into it. It's not often that an NFL team gets the chance to upgrade to positions with a single move, but that opportunity is right in front of Miami's coaching staff. The only question is whether they'll take it. Of course, this isn't a guaranteed decision. Coaching staffs are creatures of habit, and offensive line coaches in particular often stick with what's working rather than chase what might work better. There's also the matter of Daniel's eventual return, which remains difficult to forecast. When he's healthy, his pedigree and contract suggest he'll reclaim his job. But does Miami really want to wait for a hypothetical return when a very real, very present solution sits in Burrow's skill set? Miami's identity this season has been a tug-of-war between their explosive potential and the occasional structural cracks that show up in moments of high leverage. They're talented enough to beat anyone, disciplined enough to weather rough games, and flawed enough to make even inferior opponents feel dangerous if the offensive line falters. A change like this isn't just about correcting one position, it's about empowering the entire system. Austin Jackson's return isn't just the return of a starter, it's an invitation to rethink, recalibrate, and reimagine what this offense can look like when the pieces fall exactly where they should. If Miami is bold enough, they can double dip on improvement without acquiring a single outside player. They can fix the problems with one move. They can turn their biggest weakness into a functional strength. Do they have the courage to do it? That answer is coming soon. But if they're not thinking about it already, they should be. The door is open. The timing is perfect. The opportunity is rare. And for a Dolphins team trying to break through the ceiling that has haunted them for years, this is the kind of decision that could change everything. Still with us? Then show some love. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What's your take on the Fins this week? The whispers have been growing louder, and if you've been following the NFL closely, you might have felt the tremor before the earthquake. Miami, a city that's become synonymous with sun, beaches, and now heartbreak for Dolphins fans, is suddenly at the center of a storm that could reshape the franchise in ways nobody saw coming. At the heart of it all, Tua Tagovailoa, the young quarterback who once symbolized hope, precision, and a new era of offensive excitement, now teetering on the edge of an exit that feels both inevitable and shocking, depending on who you ask. Sources close to the team, the kind that speak in hushed tones when they think the cameras aren't rolling, have been dropping hints that the Dolphins' relationship with Tua is at a crossroads, and the situation is far from the straightforward trade talks narrative you might have heard. There's tension, yes, but also a sense of urgency and calculated maneuvering. The kind that makes you realize this isn't just about football, this is about identity, money, loyalty, and timing, all intertwined in a drama that has every fan on edge. Imagine the quiet, almost invisible gears turning behind closed doors in the Dolphins facility. The front office wrestling with decisions that could echo for years, and then, on the other side, you have Tua, a young man whose career arc has been nothing short of meteoric, yet constantly shadowed by questions about durability, consistency, And the fit between his style and the high-octane expectations of Miami's front office, people close to the locker room are reportedly divided. Some see the possibility of a fresh start elsewhere as liberating, a chance to escape the relentless heat of Miami media scrutiny, while others are anxious, seeing the dissolution of a quarterback-franchise relationship that had been nurtured with care, attention, and no small measure of public expectation. Rumors suggest that Tua has been quietly assessing his options, reaching out to familiar contacts, and listening more carefully than ever to advice from agents, former players, and trusted confidants who know the mercurial nature of NFL careers. Meanwhile, insiders suggest that the Dolphins' front office is weighing an almost unprecedented combination of factors: draft positioning, salary cap flexibility, team morale, and even fan sentiment. It's the kind of calculation that reads like chess played on a football field, and every move, or even the hint of a move, is magnified 1,000 times over by social media speculation and sports talk radio. What's fascinating here is that the narrative isn't linear. One moment, you hear that Tua is firmly planted in Miami, the Golden Boy quarterback whose contract, while substantial, is manageable within the salary cap. The next, you catch a snippet of conversation about trade packages, potential suitors, and a shifting landscape that could see him in a completely new uniform before anyone even has time to blink. Teams that once seemed content with their current quarterbacks are suddenly rumored to be sniffing around, intrigued by the idea of a young, talented QB who has already shown flashes of brilliance under pressure. And the speculation doesn't stop with the NFL alone. The ripple effect on fantasy football drafts, fan loyalty, and even the business side of ticket sales and merchandise is something the Dolphins brass cannot ignore. People who have been following Tua since his college days talk about the meticulous nature of his preparation, the quiet confidence he carries, and the sharp intelligence that has always set him apart. Yet, in Miami, whispers indicate even the most talented players are not immune to scrutiny when expectations are sky high and patience is thin. The idea that Tua might leave has ignited a whirlwind of opinions. Some analysts predict a blockbuster trade that would alter the power balance in the AFC. Others warn of a potential dip in performance if the disruption and stability hits too hard. And still others speculate about the personal dimensions. How does a quarterback, so intertwined with the city and its hopes, cope with leaving behind not just a team, but a community, a fan base, and a culture that has embraced him from day one? And let's not forget the ripple effect on the Dolphins themselves. If Tua exits, who steps up? Is there a plan buried deep in the front office, a young QB waiting in the wings? Or will Miami pursue a high-profile acquisition to fill the void? Rumors abound about potential trade packages, draft picks being moved, and even veteran players being signed or released to create cap space, each decision loaded with consequence. Sources say that negotiations, while still in early stages, have been surprisingly nuanced. Teams are reportedly gauging Miami's threshold for Tua's departure, not just in financial terms but in strategic ones, assessing whether they can craft an offer that satisfies the Dolphins without overcommitting. Meanwhile, Tua's camp is said to be carefully orchestrating messaging, balancing the public perception of loyalty and commitment with the private reality of wanting to explore opportunities that maximize his career trajectory. The human element cannot be overstated here. Behind every rumor, every trade speculation, there's a young quarterback who has lived under a microscope, who has had to navigate the highs of victory and the lows of injury, and now faces a choice that could define his career in a profound way. The drama has spilled into every corner of the NFL ecosystem. Sports media channels are dissecting body language from press conferences. Fan forums are buzzing with imagined scenarios, and social media posts are being scrutinized for hidden meaning. Every small gesture is being read as a potential clue: a delayed press conference, a cryptic social media post, a meeting behind closed doors. And as all of this unfolds, one thing is clear: the situation is fluid, electric, and intensely captivating. You can feel the tension, the anticipation, the sense that something monumental is on the verge of happening, whether Tua ultimately leaves Miami or stays to fight for his place. The narrative has already captured the imagination of fans across the league. It's a story of talent, expectation, loyalty, and ambition, and it's far from finished. What happens next could redefine not only the trajectory of a promising quarterback's career, but also the very identity of a franchise and the balance of power in the AFC. And as the rumor mill churns and the speculation intensifies, you can almost sense the collective holding of breath across the NFL landscape, as everyone waits to see how this chapter in Tua Tagovailoa's story will be written and whether Miami will emerge from the storm with its star quarterback intact, or whether the winds of change will sweep him away to new horizons, leaving fans, analysts, and insiders alike scrambling to understand a move that no one saw coming, but somehow feels inevitable. In the end, this is more than a story about football. It's a story about opportunity and risk, about the human desire to chase greatness while navigating a web of expectations, contracts, and allegiances. And in the shadows of all this speculation, one thing is certain: whether Tua remains in Miami or departs, the impact of this decision will reverberate for years, shaping not only the Dolphins' future, but the broader narrative of the league itself. Every rumor, every leak, every whisper carries weight, because this isn't just a trade or a signing, it's the potential pivot point of a career, a franchise, and the hearts of countless fans who have lived and breathed every pass, every scramble, every victory, and every heartbreak with Tua Tagovailoa at the center of it all. And if you listen closely to the chatter, the hushed conversations in front offices, the subtle hints dropped by insiders, it becomes almost cinematic: a quarterback standing at a crossroads, a city holding its breath, and a league watching closely as the next chapter of this unfolding saga is quietly but relentlessly written behind the scenes. That's a wrap for today's dive. If you're loving the content, share it with a fellow Dolphins fan. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a splash. Fins up!